afternoon, everybody. How is your Denver Startup Week going so far? All right, so we like to do this little test at the beginning of all of our sessions and ask, how many of you have been to more than 2 Startup Week events? More than 5? How about more than 10? 15? Whoa, because somebody means they need to get another job, right? Anyway, I know many of you in the room, but my name is Tammy Dorr. I'm the CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership. I'm proud to be one of the co-organizers of Denver Startup Week, and you'll hear in a moment some acknowledgments of my other co-organizers in the community from our governor. But first and foremost, I want to thank you all for being part of Startup Week. Many of you have heard already that we were trending nationally. We've had 32 million impressions to date. So the word is getting out there that Denver's a place for startups. It's my pleasure today to welcome to the stage a leader who has absolutely laid down the gauntlet that Colorado will be, bar none, the most innovative state in the nation. Please welcome an individual who completely understands and values the entrepreneur, that loves startups and is doing everything he can to create that platform in our state, Governor Hickenlooper.
Okay, I pretty much my whole life I've always wanted to be the warm-up act for Brad Feld. It's been kind of a long-term kind of, you know, this summer, just in case you might not have seen it, but I did get to sing a song with the Old Crow Medicine Show to a sold-out crowd at Red Rocks. But I think doing warm-up for Brad Feld is a little higher up in terms of that. So I got an announcement to make. Before I do that, I want to just give congratulations to all of you guys for making this. This is one of the really one of the greatest startup events in America and really in the world, and it has gone a long way towards defining Denver, Boulder, Colorado as a place that not only celebrates ideas and innovation, but also puts them into action. Tries to figure out how do we get more startups, more businesses. It's the reason why we've got, you know, the Kauffman Foundation last year ranked the top metropolitan areas in America based on per capita, but the number of technology startups per capita, 4 of the top 10 were in Colorado, right? You guys have played a big part of that. I want to give, in addition to Tammy Dorr, who runs the Downtown Denver Partnership, does their straight job, Ben Data and Eric Matisek, who are the co-organizers with all in this. This wouldn't happen without them. Please give them a hand. And I love, I mean, the entire steering committee is volunteer, and I don't know if any of you are in the room. I'm sure some of you are in the room. Can you guys stand up or wave your hand if you're already standing, if you're on the part of the steering committee? Please. Thank you for your all effort. There's several in the back. So my announcement today, the Department of Defense has announced it, and let me get the name of this thing right. It's the Strengthening Manufacturing by Accelerating Research and Technology in Colorado program. So it's now this time I want you to listen to the first letters, right? And again, we make it these are the kinds of support grants that really are a big part of that we've used over the last 4, 5, 6 years to kind of help support the work you guys are all doing, and it is one of the reasons we have 4 of the top 10 metropolitan areas for startups. We have, you know, according to Forbes last year, the #1 workforce in America. Business Insider ranked Colorado for the first time in the state's history with the #1 fastest growing economy in America. But a lot of it's your work was supported by these kinds of grants. So don't make fun of the name. Sometimes these grants can be very sensitive. Remember the letters as we go through this. Strengthening manufacturing by accelerating research and technology in Colorado, or SMART Colorado. SMART Colorado is going to receive a $7 million 2-year grant to build resiliency and try to help small and medium-sized companies find new customers, to accelerate new products. The Defense Department wants to make sure that this crucial engine of our nation's defense, with sequestration, as money gets being cut down in other ways, they want to provide some support to, again, kind of accelerate, lubricate that transition so that we can do more job creation and more support to the private sector companies while we have this a downturn in overall defense spending. I think for Colorado it's going to be a great thing, right? It's going to help. We'll put it towards aerospace, defense, all the kind of tech companies, GPS, biotech. I mean, you look at the whole arc, transportation, logistics. There's a whole range of all of our advanced manufacturing that are going to be eligible for this. And again, $7 million in 2 years isn't a gigantic grant, but it ain't peanuts, right? And I think if we do this wisely, we can again use it to continue our acceleration and our expansion. So without that, do I get to introduce someone who needs no introduction. He runs the Colorado Technology Association. He's been a great help and a great support to our administration. I know Mayor Hancock feels the exact same thing. I know if you go to Fort Collins or Colorado Springs, his support and his willingness to do anything that needs to be done and make sure the right people are doing it. I mean, he has no match. So our great head of technology for the state, Eric Matisek.
Thank you, Governor, and congratulations on that announcement. Really exciting to add that to the portfolio of awesome innovation activities that are happening here in the state. It's always humbling to have an introduction like that because the person I get to introduce, I learned everything from. And so when we talk about connecting the Front Range and we talk about Boulder, Denver, Colorado Springs, and Fort Collins, Brad Feld has been a huge catalyst in helping drive all of us together. And he leads with humility. He leads with connectivity, and he leads with just always doing the right thing at the right time to put people and places together to really catalyze our communities. And Denver Startup wouldn't be Denver Startup Week at the size that it's begun without the support of Boulder, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs, and its leaders and your inspiration, not only here locally with the Blackstone Entrepreneurs Network and Startup Colorado and NCWIT and all the things you sit on, but at a global level. With Startup Weekend and now with Up Global, you're doing amazing things to bring us all together. So with that, I'd love to introduce Brad Feld and Feld and Friends. And as he's coming up, please pull out your phones and hashtag Denver, DEN Startup Week. Get ready to tweet away at this panel and say something nice about the announcement too with the new announcement from the governor. And so Brad Feld. And his posse.
I will sit here. I got one. Okay. Just one in every seat. Wow, we got lots of mics. Mics for sale.
I need one, Brad. You might want it for questions later, right?
Yeah, so I actually love playing cleanup for Governor Hickenlooper. You know, any state that has a governor named Hick is a good thing, but I think it's worth noting. Government generally makes me pretty tired, and it has been an absolute total joy to get to work with John and his team, Ken, and see what our governor has done for our state, not just in the context of things that governors do, but also in the context of really understanding entrepreneurship, really engaging with the entrepreneurial and startup community, and really walking the talk. So many people, I think, in John's position could be, you know, surface level and sort of say the right thing, but not really believe it and push it through everything that happens. And you live it, and it's just wonderful that you're our governor. Thank you. And yes, I voted for him too. Yeah, that's all right. Buy me a beer later, okay? Thanks for coming to this. I want to quickly frame this and introduce three of my friends, and then let them do short intros, and then we're going to have a conversation. We're going to try to do a dinner table type of conversation versus a typical panel discussion around some issues around entrepreneurship and the relationship between entrepreneurship and investor and entrepreneur and oneself in the context of building a company. The three people next to me, Bart Lorang, who's the CEO of Full Contact, Rand Fishkin, who's the founder of Moz, and Ben Ha, who's the founder of Cheeseburger. Ben and Rand are from Seattle. Bart's from Denver. And I thought I'd bring some of my friends on this panel that weren't locals, so get exposure to some people and some thinking from different part of the country. We have a Foundry CEO event tomorrow all day, so in addition to coming in for Denver Startup Week, it was convenient for them. Foundry Group is, in addition to Foundry Group being all in on each of these 3 companies, we're large investors, we have deep commitment to them. They're all companies that I would say are mid-stage in different levels of scaling as a business. But they're ones that we're deeply, deeply committed to versus, an early stage company which we would be emotionally committed to but not fully invested in yet and sort of on its way. But in addition to that, each of Ben, Rand, and Bart I consider to be extremely close personal friends. I develop close friendship and close relationships with lots of entrepreneurs I work with. Sometimes it doesn't work out and those friendships endure. Sometimes it doesn't work out, the friendships don't endure. And lots of different things happen. But in the case of these 3 guys, I think we've had plenty of ups and downs along the way. But that personal dynamic and that personal relationship, when I thought about who I wanted to bring to the panel as friends, rather than just entrepreneurs, these were the 3 guys that came to mind. So with that, let's spend 3 to 5 minutes, each of you, talk about your business arc so everybody has context about your company, and then we'll start the broader conversation.
You want to start? Yeah. So Cheeseburger, you guys know us from our famous cat photos on the internet. So 2007, September, I had a 6-figure job. I just paid off all the loans from my previously failed startup. And so I decided that I wanted to be getting back in the game because that's what I do. It's what you are as an entrepreneur. Sometimes you are, you can't deny it. And
An addict.
An addict, yeah. So I took this website that I met this guy on the internet, and I ended up making an offer to buy the website because I had an angel investor friend who said he would help me raise money to buy it and start a new company. So I ended up raising $2.25 million under the promise that we would buy new sites. So one day I quit my job, September 27th of 2007, right as the Great Recession was starting, and I had no website but a bunch of money. I was like, oh, that's dangerous. So I bought a cat picture website, and then I bought a site called Failblog, and then I built a bunch of new sites, and then 3 months later, we're profitable. We're like, holy crap, there's business behind this. And so the secret to the sauce there was I didn't do anything with it. It grew, it grew, it grew, and with a ton of traffic. Our overhead was low. I was sitting in my living room couch, which was sagging, with my dog, and so my dog and I would be like this, and I would work on my laptop, and of course you're profitable. So I did that, and then I got an office in Seattle. We moved into the city of Seattle, and then started hiring people one at a time, and we kept on being profitable for 3 years. We built new sites. We experimented. We threw spaghetti on the wall. That was our MO. We got a little bit smarter about it, and then I met Brad through Michal Baldwin, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know. And Brad and I think I had a 30-second conversation. Didn't really think much of it. We weren't looking for money. I don't think they were interested. Who cares? I don't know what happened, but we ended up kind of talking. We had a mutual friend named Greg Gottesman, who's also on our board. Great guy, venture capitalist in Seattle. He really wanted to invest. And so Greg, I think, reintroduced us. We kept on talking. And one day, Reddit had this thing where they didn't want to post marijuana ads or something like that. It was kind of this snafu. And I called up Brad and like, hey, should we buy Reddit? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so I made this public announcement to buy Reddit, and Condé Nast is like, you friggin' idiots. So that didn't go anywhere. But Brad and I started actually kind of talking and working together before we even had a business. And so since you're profitable and growing, this is like 2008, 2009, you thought this is the bubble. I mean, even then, back then it was pretty frothy. We would get venture referrals and would say, no, we're not looking for money. We're profitable. I have a bunch of angel investors that I'm beholden to. I'm not going to do this. Well, so Brad and Greg and a couple of other VCs came to us and said, we'd like to do this. And so we ended up recapping the company, raised something like $35 million. A lot of it was recapitalization back out to the angel investors. And I stayed on board. And the reason I stayed on board was that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, not an investor. Entrepreneur was more fun for me, and I could get a job doing something somewhere, so that's fine. So we took the money, and then promptly I stopped executing. And so we went through this period of like terrible pain for like a couple of years, in which we just started getting out about 12 months ago, and we've been kind of climbing our way out of that hole we dug. Be careful what you wish for. So.
Yeah, so I'm Rand. I started the site that, well, let's see. I dropped out of college in 2001 and started building websites with my mom, Jillian, who some of you might know. And in 2004, we had racked up a ton of debt, which you shouldn't do with a consulting company or a website building company, but we were bad at lots of stuff. And I started a website called SEO Moz that was a blog essentially chronicling my journey to learn SEO so that we could help our clients who had websites who wouldn't pay us because they didn't have any traffic. And since you don't have any money, you can't buy ads, have to get your traffic organically. That website became very popular. In 2007, we launched a suite of tools. We built a bunch of SEO tools internally and made those public. You could PayPal us, I think, $29 a month. It was a good deal. And we still have a few people at the old $39 a month price because we grandfather people in. So if you joined us in like February of 2007, and then that suite of tools sort of took off like a rocket. We got some inbound interest from Michelle Goldberg from Ignition Partners, who's a phenomenal VC, has been on our board ever since, and Kelly Smith, who is a private investor with Curious Office. And they sort of reached out. They put in $1.1 million in November of 2007 to help us do something that seemed mostly impossible at the time. And that was, we wanted to build the back end of Google, which you should raise more than $1 million to do that. But I was very stubborn, right? I didn't want to like lose control of the company, and I had no idea what VCs were really, and I thought that they were just trying to take the company away, and so I was very scared. It wasn't until I worked with Michelle for a long time that I started to trust her and investors in general. And we actually did it. The weird part is we pulled it off. This will become salient later in the story when we try something else big that doesn't work because we think we're good at stuff. You should stay humble even when you have that out of the park success. And so let's fast forward a bunch of years. It's 2012. The company just completed in 2011. I believe we had an $11 million revenue year. So we've basically been doubling revenue every year, you know, 1.1, 3.1, 5.7, 11.4. So it's 2012, and I get a very weird introduction to Brad by way of Brad's wife, Amy, who was reading my wife's blog, The Everywhereist, everywhereist.com, and Amy apparently was a pretty religious reader. She caught a post where Geraldine referenced Moz and me, forwarded it to you. You wrote a post about us. I reached out to you. Yeah, and then when we got Ben a new chair. You should take that one. Yeah. That one's not good. That's yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So we reached out to Brad. We had a call, and we basically had a deal signed in a week. That should never happen. Well, it should always happen. It almost never happens, but turned out to be remarkable. And I think part of that is some of Moz's core values and my core values and how they fit with Brad. I like to say, so Moz's core values we call tag fee. It's transparent, authentic, generous, fun, empathetic, and the exception. Not exceptional like really good, but the exception in terms of the exception of the rule. So tag fee is something I describe Brad as being even before he knew what it was. Brad has always been tag fee. And so I think we had this close relationship. So Brad invested, I believe you guys put in 15 million, and Ignition put in another 3. And so Ignition and Foundry are sort of co-investors that own around 15%-ish of Moz each. My mom and I still own about not quite 50% of the company. Jillian stepped aside from the board when Brad joined, and she now does some investing stuff, and that's really cool for her, and cool for the companies she puts money into. And we, of course, took this money and we're like, okay, now we have this other big idea. We're going to go much broader than SEO, and you know, we're going to do social media and brand mentioning and brand mentions and help people with content and all these other things. And we built what I would consider to be a pretty crappy version of a lot of those different things into a suite that was still mostly good at SEO, but kind of the SEO of like a year or two ago. It was supposed to take us 6 months to launch that. It took us a little over 2 years to launch that. we had 80,000 people who on day one when we announced it signed up to get that product. And at the end, 2 months after it actually launched, we had about negative 1,000 customers from our previous high. So when I say this was a shit release and a shit product, it really was quite terrifying. That was, by the way, in November of last year. This mustache that you see has been growing ever since then. And when things turn around, we get back to profitable, when we sort of reach some metrics that I've agreed with our CFO, I will be shaving the mustache. There's 2 other things you need to know. One, I don't put wax in it. This is just Judaism. You know,
Mine just grows out.
yeah, right? Like the same curls you see on Brad. You see, like, you know, the payas that, like, the guys in New York
At least you guys
have.
can grow a mustache. Jeez.
And the second, you'll get there. And the second thing is that this process was deeply emotionally affecting for me, in such a harsh and negative way that in November I started having conversations with Brad and the board about stepping down as CEO, and having our longtime COO and the woman who conducted my wedding to Geraldine and one of my best friends in the world, Sarah Bird, take over as our CEO. And so one of the things I do kind of want to apologize. I feel bad that it's like 4 dudes up here. There should be, I mean, Michelle was our first investor. Jillian was my co-founder. Sarah's my CEO. Like, there should be more women up here. And I think, you know, Brad nudged me and Moz to make that change earlier rather than later. And so in January of this year, I stepped aside as CEO. And my current title at Moz is individual contributor, which is a path that I'm very passionate about. I believe that there should be a path for individual contributors at companies, not just managers. And we are doing better. Like Ben and Cheeseburger, Moz is doing much better. We had a very nice August, and hope we'll have a good September. But it's been a very tough journey.
That's right. So I'm Bart Lorang, founder and CEO of Full Contact. I'll start my story very, very young, quickly. Started my first software company when I was 8, programming. Never really been gainfully employed, I guess. Joined a company when I was 16 with a friend in high school. His dad owned a company. I joined, and then like a year later, they made me full partner. What? Yeah. And so it was a very, yeah.
The dad was only 21. The kid, the kid was like 3.
Anyways, 100% bootstrap company. Very, very unfocused in terms of our direction. All consulting all the time. Basically spent about 13 years with that company, but learned a ton. So traveled the world, worked with clients, enormous clients, did everything from mining to manufacturing to top secret defense stuff to utility work to sort of every system integration project you can imagine. Grew it from 3 people to, I think at our height, we had a total of about 70 people, including our bench, keeping the doors open every day. So in that way, I resonated very much with your story of Feld Technologies. I think you started when you were like 20, something like that. So and then you exited when you were 29? 28? Yeah, so I exited DTS when I was 29, which is the company that I joined, but it wasn't a fun exit. It was one of those things where the senior partner came back after about 4 years, 4 years of sort of not working. He came back one day and told me I was out. So it was a very contentious 9-month struggle to sort of get my money out of the company, but I eventually did. And then during that time, my legal counsel had sort of advised me, like, hey man, you might want to find something to do. So I joined. I said, well, let's go see what this MBA thing is all about. So I went to Daniels College of Business, and then it wasn't working. It was just sort of in legal proceedings. Let's put it that way. There I eventually met my wife Sarah, and then Ben Data, who, give him another round of applause, by the way, for all the work that he does. So going through all these classes in my MBA program, I got the entrepreneurial itch again. So as soon as my contractual obligations were over, I immediately started another company, like December 31st at like 11:59 p.m. 2009. Like seriously, I swear to God, I had no idea what it was going to be, what it was going to do. I created a holding company, all this stuff, and so I started the company, called it Cloud Center, because I knew like this cloud thing was going to be like a thing, right? Like, oh, cool. I didn't know what we were gonna do. Like, I immediately ordered like a Google search appliance, got a Google Apps reseller agreement, called up a dev shop in India and started hacking on some code. Like, totally unfocused. Just like, I just want to fucking do something, because at 9 months I hadn't done a thing, right, other than school and lawyers. That's right. He's a good study group mate, and my wife actually. So anyways, started the company. We created a product called Rainmaker, and it sort of was born out of the idea. I was looking at my wife Sarah's Outlook contacts. She actually used to work at Exclusive Resorts right upstairs, and we were like 2 months into dating, and I don't know why I was looking at her Outlook contacts, but I was. I don't know why. Anyways, they were really awkward. I never really have an explanation for that, but
I can tell you a story about it.
Oh shit!
Make one
You
up.
were in there, weren't you? No. So Sarah's contacts were perfect. Like, if you imagine a perfect Outlook contact data file, that's what they were. Every photo, first name, last name, kids' names, birthday, anniversary, detailed notes, fax number, office. If she didn't have a picture of the person, company logo, just like amazing. And I'm like, I don't want those contacts. But the problem is, I had like 6,000 contacts, and she had like 150 that she manually curated. And so basically, what I learned was that Sarah really used those contacts to be awesome with people, right? If you know Sarah, you know that you get a book when your kid turns 2 years old, right? Like, this is the type of person she is. And I wanted to be that person, but have it totally fucking automated so I don't have to work. I want to be awesome with people, but don't have to work at it. And I also knew just from running a company previously that like contact data was this thing, this really gross thing that lives in CRMs and billing systems and things like Moz and Cheeseburger and their advertising. Like, oh my God, it's everywhere, right? And it's all out of date. It's not accurate. It's not deduplicated. And it's this really nasty, gnarly problem that nobody solved. So we created this application called Rainmaker that sort of, you could buy raindrops and make it rain on your contacts. Sarah called it sort of dirty. I agreed, but our company name is Full Contact. She still thinks that's kind of dirty, but I like it. And so we launched this application. It was me and a couple guys. I think we spent like $60,000 of my money getting it up and going, and it was a totally hacky solution, but then Lifehacker featured it, it took off, and people were paying like 25 cents per contact to make it rain on each contact, which I couldn't believe, but it sort of proved that people would pay for this. And then around that time, we got into Techstars. The Techstars folks kept calling us, and we said, okay, we'll join Techstars. And I started raising money, and I didn't know exactly what I was doing because I had bootstrapped my entire career. And so I have a blog post out there called 126 No's and 1 Yes, detailing the struggles I had raising money. I was talking to private equity guys. Guys are asking about, hey, do you have a filed patent? I'm like, no, I just started the fucking company like 9 months ago. Anyways, around that time, and then joined Techstars, we rebranded as Full Contact. And I met Brad. And Brad was involved with GIST, which T.A. McCann is probably floating around here somewhere. But and sort of a portfolio conflict, right? Very interested in the problem and what we were doing. We liked each other, but we knew it was a no-go in terms of investment. And fortunately for us, we raised about $1.8 million coming out of Techstars, led by Chris Marks at Tango Group and Scott Beck there, and then with a bunch of angels. We then fast forward to the next year. You had exited GIST in February of 2012, I want to say. And then I approached, I think, Seth for some advice on our pitch deck. I was planning on raising some additional money. I asked him for advice. He emailed it around, and then I got this email from Brad saying, hey, let's go take a walk. I'm like, okay, let's go take a walk. And we happened to be at some like defrag or glue conference, right? And so we took an hour walk. And then you sort of came back. We sort of walked back, and you said, here's how it goes. Every single time we meet, it should get better. I'm like, okay, this is the first real time, so hopefully the next time is better. And let's just, meet up with everybody else in a few weeks. And we linked that up. You came in for a morning, and then we went to lunch. And then right at the table, you said, well, I want to invest, and I want to invest, $5 million. I said, okay, that's cool. And you're like, oh, I'll send a proposal tomorrow. Okay, that works for us. And it was like 3 bullet points, right? It was like how much, the pre-money, and the option pool, which is really the only 3 terms that matter, knowing that everything is equal. And I had some long fucking response, like 3 pages long, about some things, negotiating it up a little bit. He's like, okay, cool, let's do this. And then we just CC'd the lawyers in, because I asked, is there any term sheet required? He's like, no, that's just busy work. Who cares? Okay, that works. And so I knew things were going well. Like, hey, this is gonna be a good relationship. We were about to launch a product, our sort of cloud address book, because we had sort of a developer product, but we were about to launch our end user product. It was July 2012. Jesus, it's September. Fuck 2014. Oh my God. Anyways. That product, we had some technical architecture issues, some product management issues, was about to launch, and I think there was a gate on it for about 18 months before we let people in the door. Is that about right? Anyways, tremendous struggles during that time, and I remember just Brad has been very, very patient with us. We keep growing revenue with our developer product, and we're about actually 30 days away, Ben. 30 days away.
I've heard that before.
from launching our full non-beta everything. No, but during that arc, we had.
Can we tweet that?
Yeah, yeah. Always 30 days away, right?
Free beer tomorrow.
That's right. That's right. And so we've had a lot of struggles, right? We've had ups and downs. We've had tremendous inbound press and publicity about some of our HR policies, like our paid vacation policy, or that you copied.
Stole.
You stole. Yeah.
That I made fun of.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Whatever. So, but like not a lot of press about our own products, which has been extraordinarily frustrating for us. But I think Brad has been a model of sort of just patience and long-term thinking during that process, because everybody, I think the last board meeting you said everybody wanders in the desert for a while. And see, again, the Jewish reference, but it's been really, really amazing to watch.
Is it just me, or like I don't remember actually doing that meeting where I remember raising money from Brad? Like, you go to a VC's meeting and like there's a bunch of partners and you sit down and you like do the thing where you answer a bunch of questions and you're like I don't remember ever having that meeting with Brad. Brad remembers. It was at Nobu in Las Vegas at CES, and I have no recollection of what we talked about. I just remember meeting him. That was about it. And the next thing you know, we're at a term sheet.
You drank a lot more sake that night.
Well, with us, it was a virtual distributed meeting. Seth had seen us, Ryan, Jason, they all sort of like weighed in virtually, and then they're like, yeah, we're ready to go.
Yeah, we went to the office for like a day and met with all the partners, but it wasn't like the other ones, right?
No,
like they just popped in for an hour and we're like, what are you doing? It's
very
casual.
casual.
You want to build this?
Yeah.
Oh, we can build that too. Yeah.
Do you guys do that on purpose?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So we very deliberately don't have the classical, come in, pitch us as VCs. We sit around a table and stare at you with our arms crossed, and after 4 minutes, we start checking our email on our iPhones. We don't play that game. What we do instead is
Sequoia. 7-second delay, bleep button, thank you.
I was on the receiving end of that plenty, and I was also on the giving end of that at Mobius, because that's how we did at Mobius. And I always thought it was a colossal waste of time, and it was also incredibly ineffective at actually understanding what was going on. And so our approach is I have 3 other partners, Seth, Jason, and Ryan. Each of the 4 of us meet over a period of time that can range from anywhere from a couple of days to a year or more, individually with the entrepreneurs. And what we do is we use the products and we get to know the people, and we sort of have this very qualitative dynamic. And a lot of times it would be one of us that develops a relationship and then decides, oh, I'm interested in investing in this company, at which point the other people get involved. But it's not manufactured. It's not, okay, let me coach you on how to come pitch to my partners to get to a yes. It's almost the opposite. It's like, just go meet with them. And we have an internal rule, which is if any of the four of us qualitatively have a downturn in terms of a company, we pass. So when you say every meeting has to be better than the previous one, this is across all four of us. So we're constantly checking in. And if somebody, like I'm really enthusiastic and Seth's like, we pass.
That happens a lot with Seth, by the way.
Seth. Oh, wait, Jason's not here. So we could use Jason. If Jason says, we pass. And
Thank you, Seth.
the powerful dynamic of that for us is that it's not that we're not rigorous in our analysis. It's that we don't try to condition each other of the four of us in the decision-making process. We can only make about a dozen investments at most a year, 10 new investments a year. If we had infinite people and infinite money, we could probably do 100 investments a year based on the stuff we see. So, and we have thousands of things that we're exposed to. So when I say 100 that we could do, 100 that are way above a quality bar that we certainly wouldn't, and are investable companies and are going to raise money from a high quality venture firm. We're fine missing 9 of the 10 because our job is not to get all of them. Our job is to get the ones where we really want to engage with the people and with the company on a long-term journey. The other comment I'll make, and then I want to sort of start with the first question. The other comment I make, in each of the 3 stories, you heard, lots of ups and downs. And I would say in our world, actually all 3 of you are in our 2010 fund, which was the second fund we raised. And I think that each of these 3 companies have the potential to be a very significant return for us in that fund. And I think the ups and downs that they've had in a lot of ways have made the companies much stronger as they prepare for the next wave of what they're doing than if they hadn't had it, because they were going to have this at some point in their life.
My God, you make me nervous.
Okay. One of the things that every successful company I've been involved in, Seth, you can say whether you think this is true for you too, but for every company that I've been involved in that's been successful had a near-death experience, at least one. Always. Like near death, like not like fake death, like near death. Like you really woke up one day and you thought, this company might not be here in a month because of, it could be a crisis, or it could be a thing that played out over a period of time that was a mistake. It could be a challenge of execution. It could be people. It could be a competitive threat. It could be just a gigantic, massive fuck up in terms of execution, just a whole long list of things. And many of the really successful companies, I think when I was on the Zynga board, I think we probably had, a dozen situations that were near-death experiences on the way to, becoming a public company. And, you can talk about how Zynga has not fared that well as a public company, but it's still a $3 billion market cap company that's a $1 billion revenue company that came out of nowhere in 2007 and reinvented an industry. So you hear that during the journey. And I would suggest for all of you that you're going to have that in your journey some point, so don't be afraid of that. Just know it's part of the journey. I want to talk about some of the sort of softer side of the dynamics of being an entrepreneur, founder, CEO of companies, and relationship with investor, board, and yourself. And that's where I want to take the conversation today. I think that'll be additive. So first question. There was a lot of conversation about how we met the first time and what your original engagement with Foundry Group was and how that worked. But you also have some other investors, and you have different relationships with those individual investors than you might have, for example, with me. Talk about the CEO or founder investor relationship, personalizing it by individual, right? So knowing that an investor is not a generic thing. Michelle Goldberg and I are friends, but we're very different people. We have very different approaches. Greg Gottesman and I are good friends, but we're very different in terms of how we approach problem solving and what makes him anxious versus what makes me anxious, or what he does, how he approaches conflict and how I approach conflict. What is your view of that dynamic, and what is your responsibility as the founder in that dynamic? From day one of the relationship, first time you meet, through the arc of the relationship in terms of developing whatever emotional engagement, whether it's a deep friendship or whether it's simply a professional interaction. Riff on that some.
Yeah.
You go. You start.
So when I started my relationship with Michelle, it was a professional one, and it's become a personal and a friendship one over time, which I think is actually maybe a little bit different for you and I. I felt like we were social first, because I thought, for some reason I had it in my head that Foundry only did early stage investments, and so I thought that we were too big for you guys to invest. And then as we were rapidly building up our professional and personal relationships, you guys did invest. I would say, you say you and Michelle are very different people. I agree that you are, but actually my relationship with you today is really similar, right? Like, Geraldine and I will go to your condo and like hang out for a week and, go to dinner with you and Amy, and we'll go over to Michelle and Brad's house, Michelle Goldberg and Brad Goldberg, her husband, and hang out with them and their kids. And so it is very personal. I think that's very different depending on the entrepreneur and depending on the investors. And I would say that for me, a huge responsibility to myself and to Moz felt like finding investors who had the same shared values. And I mean that both in terms of like formal tag fee stuff, and also I only want to work with people who I would also want to spend time with, to people who I would endorse personally, publicly, ethically.
I have a question for you. Would you feel comfortable sending, holy shit, I'm having a terrible day, everything's falling apart, those emails that you really shouldn't to your investors?
Yeah, and I have.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually kind of funny commonality, I think, among all of us, with all of our investors, Greg, Rich, you. For me, if I have that shitty day and I'm writing that all caps email that's basically like sky is falling, the response is like, it's not. And the beauty of that isn't the it's not response, it's that I feel comfortable being able to send them that email.
Do you get frustrated with that sometimes?
What do you mean?
Like they're too zen? Yes.
They're like, will you freak out every once in a while? Because I need you to freak out right now.
Yes. Yes. That.
I do have that, but then I realize that's a stupid answer.
I know. It's like when you're with your significant other, your wife or husband or whatever.
Oh, I have a nail in my head, that one, the video? You ever seen that video? There's a woman who's got a nail in her head, and her husband's like, she's like, I have a nail in my head. And he's like, yeah, it's right there. Let me pull it out. She's like, no. I want to talk to you about the nail in my head. And he's like, but I could just take it out. Shut up and listen. I'm going to talk to you about the pain in my head because there's a nail in my forehead. And then sometimes it's like that with our investors. I'm like, I have a nail in my head. And then they're like, it's good. You'll work it out. And like, I just want you to pull it out. And it's like, that's not our job. We're here to listen to you.
I mean, I think, my investors, like, I've been very transparent with, like, and it's actually changed the behavior of some of my investors, because they were sort of scared. Like, I think a few of them were scared, because I have a very large cap table on the angel side, and I've been very, very open and honest. And some of them have commented, like, it's changed, like, how they view entrepreneurship, which I think is good. And I do send a lot of times those, holy shit, this is happening.
Yeah.
I send emails that my wife would not like me sending about our personal life and things of that nature. I mean, I get pretty deep into it.
I read your blog.
So I sort of have this thing, like, if I feel like I'm not telling people something, I just say it.
So it's changed my behavior and how I communicate with my investors. Like, I think the natural tendency is to look at how everything's great, but we're rotten. Like there's that at the end of the bottom of the email is the bombshell. And I've always made it a policy to start with the crappy part, right? Like, headline, shit sucks, but we're going to be okay, right? Like, not the other way around.
Don't bury the lead, man.
Exactly. Well, I did that once on profitability, and then he yelled at me because I always lead with the bad stuff.
It was a great email. The first month after a year and a half of the company not being profitable, the company was profitable every month until we invested, and then once we invested in a year.
I told you to
Sounds
stop
about right,
executing.
yeah.
But by
Common
design.
thing.
By design, you spend
you have
money.
money. Let's go hire some people, and grow. And at some point, that was not working. So we fired a bunch of people, and retrenched. And the retrenchment of Cheeseburger was very solid. It allowed us to catch up with ourselves. It allowed the product shift that the company was making to happen. It allowed the company, and Ben specifically, to add a very strong president who could handle operating the business versus where Ben was stuck with a leadership team that it wasn't quite gelling in the right way, and it was really suppressing you from doing your special magic. and you know, at the same time, sort of being very responsible, very thoughtful about the business evolution. And you know, voila, the company has a profitable month, and it is like on the 4th page of the email, and that was annoying. But the other comment I make, Ben, about you in this context, from my frame of reference, I think when I started working with you, when we first invested, you had a lot of you were direct, but you had a lot of internal promote about you, that to sort of cover up what wasn't working and to also give yourself more confidence. So it was the lack of ability to say, I don't like this, or I'm not doing this well, or I'm having real conflict here. And I remember one night specifically talking about one of your execs who ended up leaving, and I was outside somewhere in downtown Denver because I just remember walking around on the phone talking to you, sort of talking you off the cliff. I mean, you were about to kill this person, and that wasn't the right answer.
Murder, no good.
Rarely the right answer.
I think it was a dinner with you.
It might have been
and your
with you.
wife
It might have been with you.
And Amy's like, yeah, Ben's having some problems.
In fact, I think it might have been. So, but you really made this evolution over a 2 or 3 year period where that armor that you were wearing and the way you wore your armor, at some point you just took the armor off and tossed it in the corner. And it's not that the armor's not there. You put it on sometimes, and there's situations where you know you have context where you have to. But in your interaction, certainly with me, you've discarded it, and that allows it to get to the issue when you really do need help, right? Versus you just need me to say, oh, there is a nail in your head. Sometimes when you need the nail pulled out, you will. There was a funny moment I'll give with Bart in a board meeting, and we're talking about something, and I can't remember what the specific issue is, and you know, Bart's trying to get the answer, and you know,
I've heard this one.
I don't believe the job of the investor is to give the answer. I think the job of the investor is to help the entrepreneur discover the answer. And sometimes you have to give the answer, and sometimes you have to take the action, but it's a lot more powerful to help participate in discovering the answer. And Bart and I are going back and forth, and Ben probably remembers this because he was in that board meeting, I think. And you can see Bart getting frustrated. And Bart finally turns to me and just says, will you just fucking tell me the answer? At which point I pulled the nail out of his head and gave him the answer.
So I think there can be, you mentioned, a downside to transparency, and we've experienced that a number of times. So I think one of the most salient and more well-known ones, and I've blogged about this, right? Like you, I've blogged about VC fundraising. One of the things, I had a very bad experience raising money in 2009 when I did pitch Seth as well, but like barely. We met in a hotel, and it was, yeah. It worked out great. It worked out great. Hotel lobby, that's right. Yes, lobby, thank you. Wasn't necessary until you added it, but we met in a hotel lobby. And I pitched in excess of 40 funds, and had that meeting where you go into the boardroom and that kind of thing. And so you can sort of see the filtration on the blog post. And my result from that was, well, fuck these guys. Like, none of them gave me any money. I'm going to outrank them for all their search terms. That's what we do in SEO, right? We're like, oh yeah?
Passive
well, I
aggressive.
rank for VC fundraising and VC funding and venture capital fund and like all this stuff, right? That was like I was like #1 for that stuff for years. With this blog post. Well, I was right behind Wikipedia for some of them, but.
So if you're pissed at me and I search my name and you show up, I know you're pissed at me. All right.
Just saying. But in any case, that post hurt us significantly the next time we went to go try and raise money, right? Like, I would be on the phone with people from funds or in meetings with people, on Sand Hill Road, and they'd say, I don't want to read about this on your blog. Right? And this was like after I said, look, you know what you're getting, right? Like, the blog post exists so that you know what you're getting. And true to myself, I did write that post. And in fact, there was one fund that was super pissed. It was Excel. They were super pissed that they sort of were like, hey, I thought you said you wouldn't write about this. I was like, I anonymized your guy until right now. Yeah, that just is the downside of transparency, right? Is that some people are not open to that. Some people don't hold that as a core value. Some people think of, that shows weakness and that it's not helpful. And those aren't the people that I want to work with. They might be the people you want to work with, right? So you have to decide for yourself. I have met entrepreneurs who are extremely successful, more successful than any of us up here, who don't hold the same values, but they hold some values, and they hold true to those values. So whenever I talk about values, it's not you should be tag fee, it's you should be the thing that you want to be, and you should always authentically be that. That's
great. So take it up a notch in terms of the dynamic, and think about relationship with your board, and the evolving relationship with your board, and a couple of things to focus on. Ben, the transition from your angel board to your venture board when you were wearing your body armor, to your venture board today.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So I want to make sure that I blame somebody else right now. So I had a set of angel investors that I raised my $2.25 million from, and they're, for the most part, very good investors, savvy, very business, like all entrepreneurs. But there's a natural difference between them and us, which is they are non-professional investors. They don't do it full time. They run their own businesses. So everything that they see you doing is in context of what they've done, right? And so they can't take off the "that's how I would do it" mindset. And so I had this armor because at one point we had so much profits, we were being asked to dividend out money. And I'm like, we are a 2-year-old startup that is growing. Over my dead body, am I dividending out cash to my investors? And that's when I started actually looking on and going like, how do I get out of my situation? How do I actually build a real business with investors who are going to support me all the way? And so naturally it came over with this armor, but it took, I started seeing Jerry Colonna, and now I see Khalid, who's out in San Francisco. They work together. And I started seeing a CEO coach because Brad suggested it. And it took like a year of therapy to get over the fact that I had this body armor. And because you don't even know it, right? So you don't know how thick your skin is until somebody points it out to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to that because I think I see Rob Dell over there, and I remember my first interactions with my first VC board was like Chris Marks and Rob a little bit, and I remember Chris looking at me in a meeting and going, "You gotta stop selling me, dude." Like I was in those first board, I'm like selling him like how good we're doing, what we're doing, blah 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 blah. I'm like, stop. And I remember thinking, okay, I have to consciously do this. And I think I probably was doing that a little bit with you early on as well, of that salesman mode, like, hey, everything's going well. And so I finally learned to take it off. And what's funny is our exec team joins board meetings. A couple of our new execs, our CTO, Scott Brave, our VP of product, Sean Porter, came from the Bay Area. And they've been like, these are the weirdest board meetings we've ever seen. You guys are all emotionally fluffy and kumbaya. Like they have PTSD from previous board experiences where they're like, we're used to just getting like ripped to shreds. Like, why do you guys have all your armor off, basically? So it's been a really fascinating change to see just in terms of how I've interacted. I'm like, no, this is real. This is real. We can be open with each other and be supportive of how we're going to grow the business.
So I think one of the most interesting experiences for me is that for 2 years I was actually on the board of a company down in San Francisco that did phenomenally well. I think when I started they were smaller than Moz, and when I left the board, because they were raising new money and the new investors wanted to put some new folks on the board, they were bigger than we were and growing faster, and that was pretty remarkable because we had like tripled in size during those 2 years. And they, it was a really different experience, right? There was, I talked to the CEO, and she would, have kind of one message that she would send to you privately, and then like another message that was presented in the board meeting. I think there was a lot of armor, and I think that she probably was right to have it. I would get frustrated with some of the other board members from the investment firm about what they pushed on, when they pushed on it, how deep they were or weren't willing to get in the business. Like because I'm like an SEO and marketing guy, right? I was like, hey, whenever I come down for a board meeting, let me go spend like half the morning with the marketing team, and try and help them out and see if we can do some SEO stuff and introduce them to some people and yada, 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 and maybe go send them a link here or there, right? And that, I didn't get that sense from the other board, right, that they were in it in that fashion, and that was frustrating. I think that was a great experience, and Brad, I know you urge your CEOs to be on like one other board, not more than one, but one other board, and so that was a great experience for me to get to see things that I liked that they did, and they did do a lot of things that I liked. I think the CEO did a phenomenal job. She did amazing preparing for board meetings. Like the deck that you would get 2 days in advance was amazing. It really meant that you could have better conversations at the meeting, and also the personal dynamics, right? Getting to see some good and bad side. So I would certainly, I'd +1 that encouragement to go join other boards because it's helped us at Moz.
So let's shift gears a little. Rand, you talked a little bit about transparency and the downside of transparency as well as the upside of transparency, the importance of having a value system, not just as a founder, but as an organization, as a company. And the idea also that I would put out there that evolves over time as organizations grow. You might have a foundational set of values, but the way the values get implemented or instantiated shift around based on what the organization looks like. All three of you, have a high, in my experience, high degree of self-awareness. You're very thoughtful about your own development as entrepreneurs.
Well, now we are.
Yeah. Yeah, and
this was not always true.
Not always true. Well, you were a tough kid. How do you think about, and I'll use the two words because they're close, but they're a little different, transparency and authenticity. How do you think about those in the context of the ups and downs of the business with your leadership team, with the employees, with the broader community, with your customers? What are some of the ways you can have those values, and what are some of the challenges of being transparent or authentic, especially in some of the down parts of the up and down of entrepreneurship?
Excuse me, before y'all do that, can y'all stand up and fix your chairs? Because I'm waiting for someone to eat it. These are really... Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry for the interruption. Oh, that's right there. Yeah.
Safety first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-oh.
Ben really was going to murder us.
I was gonna. Sorry. What the hell, man? Okay. So.
Oh, no, I'll start. I have like a brief story on that. So in this down period that we have been experiencing, that I hope we're coming out of, Sarah and I and you have had conversations about transparency and authenticity. And my authentic self is a different emotional processing of the information than yours or Sarah's. Like, you and Sarah are both very positive about the long term of the business. You're like, okay, well, are we now back to the highest point we've ever been at in the company, and are we growing again? And the answer to that is yes. And all I can do is be like, yeah, but we're not growing as fast, and the product isn't as good as this competitor and this competitor on these features, and here's why this could sink anytime. And you guys are like, oh, will he shut up? Right? And so I think...
We mostly just give you hugs when you say stuff like that.
Well, and so my truth is different from the truth, and that's different from your truth and Sarah's truth. And so I think what's really challenging and what human beings are terrible at is comprehending different interpretations of the truth, meaning your team, right? So there's 140 people who work at Moz, and they have a really hard time when I go on stage at an all hands, or did, now I just sit in the audience, and say, I think this is all fucked, and I'm really frustrated about this, and we need to fix this fast, and I'm frustrated that we aren't fixing this faster. And if you're responsible for this, please do that. And Sarah gets up and is like, this is not great, but these things over here are all going really well, and you should be quite proud, and I have no doubt that we'll fix these things. And the team goes back to their desks and are like, well, go out for beers after that, and are like, what the hell did I just hear? What should I take away from that? What does it mean that Rand and Sarah have very different opinions of how the business is going? I don't understand. I can't process that. Who should I believe? Who should I trust? And The truth is, they're both true. But I think one of the things we had to recognize was you can't have that conflicting message at the top from leadership to the team all the time. It drives people insane.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, I do a thing every month where I just sort of riff for, I don't know, 30 minutes in an email to the company, just sort of like how I'm feeling and thinking about things in different categories. And I've consciously, particularly this last quarter, try to adopt a sort of glass half full mentality. I think I have the same tendencies as you, just be like, all these great things, but then this sucks, my God, we're slow, good Lord, how would we screw that up? And just sort of just beat yourself. You can do that as a CEO constantly. You know, and be very transparent with my feelings, but at the same time, you can't be completely transparent with your feelings. I'll say that, like, and you and I would disagree.
I think your feelings are wrong, right? Like, your feelings are inaccurate in a lot of the cases. That's why we're saying you can't be honest with your feelings.
Right.
You
so you have to process it.
Yeah.
You sort of understand the emotion first.
That's right.
Like, and then wait for it, and then process that, and then react to it.
Yeah, it's okay to have a filter.
You can have a filter.
You're allowed to have a filter.
Yeah, and a lot of times CEOs, I mean, especially I had no filter. You probably had no filter for a long time. And just sort of being in this reactive mode, it doesn't do anybody any good. So I've been working with Jerry a lot on that too, in terms of try to have a filter,
Support
process
group
it like
for
an
CEOs
adult.
with therapists. Yeah, right.
Yeah, right.
There's that like therapy thing, right? That feelings are not facts.
That's right.
Yep,
that's
that's right.
really true. You have to remember that because, like, you feel a lot for the company. Like, that's kind of your job as CEO and founder. Is like you feel many things on behalf of the organization. But like, I feel that we don't. Like, when I cheerlead, I feel guilty about it because I know I'm cheerleading.
I hate cheerleading. God, do I?
It's the skirt that I hate the most.
I can't wear and won't wear. Like, I don't wear a Moz shirt. I can't do it. Like, it's not me. I feel inauthentic doing it. Right?
This is all I've worn for like 4 years. So.
I know.
Remember, it's not what the value system is; it's having a value system.
Correct.
I'll add a thing to this, which I experience a lot, and I experience personally. You know, one of the triggers for me when I'm under a lot of stress is I have anxiety spikes, and you know, people have different emotional reaction to stress, but for me, I have a spike of anxiety, and for me, what I'm describing is not like a normal anxious moment. It's just this extreme amount suddenly that comes out of nowhere, and I've come to label it inappropriate anxiety, right? I have this feeling of intense anxiety right now, but when I think about it intellectually, I know. When I think about it with some detachment, I know that it does not correlate with the anxiety I should be feeling for the situation. And part of what has caused me to be able to do that is I've had, you know, a long enough experience with lots of things that don't work and lots of ups and downs that I know the passage of time will cause the anxiety to go away because something will change. The problem will either get fixed or not, but time passing will cause there to be some resolution to whatever that thing is that's causing it.
Like, so much of startup emotions are binary. Either things are fantastic or you're fucked. Right? There's like not much in the middle, right?
Well, and then you're coated with the external world, which is an inauthentic or non-transparent external world. You know, we're killing it, everything's going great, our business is awesome, and you go home at night and you curl up in a ball because you're not going to make payroll the next week because you've got no money and you can't get a term sheet closed, right? Or you know that the key person on your engineering team is looking for another job, and you don't know how to talk to him or her about it, and you don't know how to confront the issue, and you wonder what that means in terms of the implication of everything else. And so you create this narrative in your head that's disconnected with the reality of actually taking action.
So let me ask you something about that. So I feel like the times when I'm the most helpful and productive for the company is when I deeply care, yet at the same time I kind of don't. Right? I don't know. There's no word for it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Is there a German word for this?
There is.
There usually is.
100 attachment.
Yeah. Some 80-character German word that says, I really passionately care. At the same time, I could give a fuck. Like I don't know what that feeling is, where you're just like, I really want to succeed, but at the same time I'm like 30,000 feet, like moving troops, and I don't care if they die, right?
And
like
it feels like everyone.
That's right.
Sorry, there's that murder thing
I
again.
know this feeling. I think we all do.
It feels like
try to get
how
into that
board
mode.
members are at board meetings,
Yes.
like detached but deeply care.
Right. And so you're on another board? Are you, like,
Yeah.
No longer.
Okay, no.
I
But like,
don't meet
it's
you no
helped me
longer.
tremendously being on another board. Like, sort of, I take that same attitude when I'm meeting with my leadership team, like that I can have as an independent board member. Anyways, I want to circle back to something.
Yeah.
The transparency thing, that can be really tough too, just from the physical standpoint, right? Just because people watch every single move you make.
Oh my God.
You have a great story about this. I think about the recycling.
Yeah. So I was in a meeting, and we had a bunch of new employees. We had turned over a bunch, and this was like a really, really tough time in the company, and we'd brought in these like couple of really smart people who really knew what they were doing, and they were going to fix up a lot of the ad serving problems of our company. And we had a big meeting introducing them, and I think it was like at our conference room. It was pretty crowded. Meeting ended. Everybody was leaving on their way out, and I noticed that there was an empty box of tissues. We had used the tissues. The box remained, and just casually on the way out, I picked it up and put it in the recycling bin. That was it. 3 weeks later, the woman that we hired, I thought she was fantastic. She came over to me and said, "I'm so happy and proud to be working at a company where the CEO is willing to pick up the trash." And I was like, "Is that a hint? Should I pick up more trash?" Like I had no idea what I'd done. And so it's like, I think she's telling me a signal. Maybe she could take out the trash more often. And then she's like, "I remember this time," and she recalled it, and I was just like, I had no recollection of doing that, right? And then you're like, "Oh my God, they're watching me at every moment."
Okay, I got one. So it's 5:30 p.m. on a Wednesday, and Sarah Bird, our CEO, at the time she was COO, was asking a couple of the engineers about one engineer in particular. She's like, "Hey, have you guys seen Kenny?" Like, and I think someone told her, "Oh, I think he went home," and she looked at him and was like, "Well, he's not going to get very far." Walked back into her office, and later that week, like it was determined, right, that person, that engineer who she said that to, went to talk to, at the time, our head of HR, Leah, and was like, "Hey, heard Sarah say this. Like, I always thought Moz was the kind of place where, you could go home at 5:30 or 5, and that was fine. And like, I didn't know we had this like, you got to put in your hours kind of culture." And Leah was like, "Oh, yeah, that sounds weird. That doesn't sound like Sarah. I don't know what's up. Like, I'd encourage you to go directly and talk to her, right? That's our 99% of HR is, I'd encourage you to go and talk directly to them." It's maybe even 0.999. And so this engineer did. They went and they talked to Sarah. Kudos to them. Bravo. And Sarah had Kenny's keys. She had his car keys. Like
So
they
literally-
were on her desk.
literally wasn't
He's
going to go very
literally not going to get very far
Yeah.
because she had his car keys. Like this is the degree to which people like pay attention, right? And there's got to be, when I thought about that, I was like, there must be 1,000 things that people have misinterpreted over the years at Moz that we never caught.
Oh yeah. So in the terrible, terrible moments of our company, when we were about to do layoffs, and then people knew that it was coming, there was this star engineer who was really, really good. I remember like it was like late in the day, and he and I were just shooting the shit, and he was telling me, like, he was asking about the life of startups, and I gave him like a very heartfelt, genuine, authentic. Well, startups go up and down, like blah 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 blah. I didn't realize he had never been at a startup where they had a downturn, like he'd always left before, and he took it as, "We're fucked, I'm leaving." So he left like 2 weeks later, and I was like, I caused our star developer to leave. Because I thought I was being nice and honest, and now he's like, "Nope, I'm out of here." I was like, "Oh, man. Sorry, dev team." I was just shut up. Yeah.
All right, we got about 10 more minutes. Why don't we do some audience stuff before we have to wrap up?
Questions?
Just, if you just shout it out, we'll repeat it. You got a question there? I thought there was somebody with questions. Anyone? Nothing?
I think I have an idea to this idea of being passionately detached. It's about being passionate about the actions you take, but not attached to the outcomes that they'll have.
I mean, that sounds fine in theory, like being passionate about the actions you take, but not about the outcome. But I deeply care about the outcomes because that's the stuff that keeps me up at night. I think you're heading in the right direction, but I'm not sure that I could live with that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Somebody else? Yes.
Yeah. Hey.
I know two of you guys are from Seattle, but given that
We both have legalized marijuana, so it's the same thing.
Actually, I have a question. If you're in Washington and you fly
Federal
to
airspace doesn't
Colorado,
allow.
Nope.
Interstate commerce is regulated by the
Can't
federal
do it.
government. It's not we. It's not like we've looked into this. Just saying. Please continue.
that commonality may actually answer the question. Given that this is a discussion about startups in Denver, and given that this, I mean, I think it's a really unique, honest, candid, unvarnished discussion by CEOs about feelings. Can anything be read into that about the sensibility in Colorado when
Yeah.
it comes to investors, board members, and executives?
So I do think that there's a cultural consensus that people reach in industries, in geographies. And I would say that this is a very different discussion than, and I've been to many, many startup-focused events in Silicon Valley and in San Francisco, and I've never heard anything like this at all. Nor have I heard that when Silicon Valley or San Francisco entrepreneurs come to Seattle and speak at GeekWire events or those kinds of things. Like this is unique. I think you're seeing things that are unique to non-Silicon Valley geography cultures, and this is my personal feeling, but I think it's also a bias that comes from Brad and from Foundry, right? That Foundry has this belief in being open, this belief in giving companies a second chance, in that it's okay to air the dirty laundry and work through problems. And I think that what's powerful to me about that is, to me, that's a much more compelling message than, hi, I'm so-and-so hotshot, I started Face Mash Graham, and never did we have a moment where growth wasn't exponential, and be inspired, go away, right? Like that, to me, that's not very helpful. You know, I wish my 21-year-old self, my 25-year-old self, my 29-year-old self could be in this audience, could hear this. I think I would have been a better entrepreneur for it.
What advice would you give to like a young person wanting to start a company?
So this is my.
Don't do it, run. No, I'm kidding. Get a job, sir. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
Become a partner at 17 or else you're done. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, that's terrible. This is advice I give to every young person, regardless of whether you want to be in entrepreneurship or anything else. I think that one of the most important things you can cultivate in school, and sometimes it's hard to do it in school, is the idea of curiosity. This deep and intense, almost unfulfillable sense of curiosity about the world and how things work will take you a long ways in life, regardless of what you decide to do.
The two things I wish I'd done, I love that answer. And the two things I wish I had done when I was a young person, particularly in like high school and college, are number one, I really deeply wish that I had spent more time learning to code. I like half-assed some PHP in college, and that was not enough. Not enough.
Sample size of two.
And I think that would have been tremendously helpful, even if I had chosen not to ever go into a career in software engineering or programming. And then the second thing is, I wish I had joined and been at a startup, even a total failure train wreck of a startup, because every experience that we have at Moz, it's like the first time I'm experiencing it. And it's so hard to get context and emotional stability around it and have anything other than, oh my God, this must never happen to anyone but us. That would be nice too.
Yeah, for me, it's really while the technical skills are super important, it's all about people. And I spent my entire 20s being a dick, and
just the 20s.
Yeah. Are you done with that face now?
Yeah.
Okay.
You improve
Used to us,
exponentially.
sorry.
Imagine that. And it's all about people, and you should sort of learn that people interface part. Learn the APIs, but learn your people API. Okay.
Also, don't take yourself too seriously. I think a lot of young entrepreneurs want to wear that armor. Like I kind of feel the same thing. Like I want to be a grown up, right? But everybody can see right through you. Be honest. Don't try to beef yourself up too much. We can all see right through it.
The two things I'd add to it are one, build a lot of shit. When I reflect back on what I did, I loved. I got a computer for my bar mitzvah when I was 13, and I loved an Apple II, and I love playing with it, and I love writing software, and I love sort of taking it apart and putting it back together again. And when I was a teenager, I ran track, and I had a girlfriend, and I read lots of books, but I spent a lot of time by myself.
Show off.
Show off, yeah.
You had it all. That's the nerd dream, having a girlfriend while reading books.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
I was the kid who, like, I couldn't get people to play D&D with me.
You just didn't have the right girlfriend. My girlfriend played D&D with me. But when I have it to look back, I did a lot of software, but I didn't do a lot of stuff, physical stuff. I didn't do stuff with wood, with metal, with materials. I didn't take, I never got into taking an engine apart. And as I got older, I became afraid of mechanical things, physical things. And I think that's even more important in our world today because of the intersection between physical and digital. And so just wherever your curiosity takes you, build things, and don't be afraid to build them and throw them away. Because part of creating a great company, part of being a great entrepreneur is you're constantly throwing away stuff you built. You're constantly throwing away old code. You're constantly changing the product. You're constantly having to move on past whatever you've built. So that's one. The other is be fearless. I was a pretty fearless teenager on some dimensions. The dimension that I was mostly fearless on was not about girls, but was about meeting with older people and that were successful business people and successful engineers, and talking to them about what they were building and what they were doing. And I couldn't get enough of that. And I was fortunate that my dad helped me meet, he was a doctor, helped me meet some of his patients. But that curiosity, but being fearless about investigating it, not feeling like there's some social barrier that prevents you from that, would be what I'd add.
I remember I took apart my parents' Laserdisc player. Remember those Laserdiscs? Like they were like records like this big.
Oh, like $2,000 too. I bet they were pissed.
Yeah. So I couldn't figure out how they didn't have to flip the disc, but like you could read the top and then the bottom. So I took it apart, and then I realized they were coming home. So I put it all back together. Never flipped the disc again. They still don't know why to this day.
All right, one more question, then we gotta finish up.
As a founder or as an investor, how do you decide when it's time to exit? Like exit, like the business, or personally exit? Either or. Well, if somebody's willing to pay a good price, right? But personally, I mean, Randy, you should answer the question. You stepped down from the CEO role.
Yeah, although I haven't had a financial exit of any kind. Actually, that's not entirely true. I think Jillian and I each took out like $400K in the 2012 round, and then promptly used that money to pay off my grandparents' mortgage and some other stuff. So I have like $150,000 in a bank account, like sitting there.
I can't believe he's saying that. Can you? All right.
It's actually like 170 right now. Like we've saved some money. Yeah, like so the weird part for me is I think I can't yet emotionally or realistically disconnect my identity from Moz. And so thinking about an exit is a really hard thing for me. Like I don't think that I could approach that question from a logical place. And maybe when I can, then that's the time. But I don't have experience here. Do you guys have some?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably been inbound on all of us, right? Inbound M&A interest on all of us, right? And so
one time there was.
Yeah,
one time, just once.
One time.
Just
One
once.
time.
AOL
Once.
offered $7 million
the same
in
guy?
the worst,
Oh, yeah.
the worst time of the year. Yeah.
But for me, it's actually a conversation I have with my wife. I actually have had it with Brad. I've had some lows in the last year where it's like, fuck, I'd sell the company for a dime. He wouldn't let me, but I was just like, take it.
I offered him a dime for it. I'm like, no problem, dime. Here's the dime. I got the dime.
Like, there's some days where you're like, good God.
He didn't take the dime.
But then usually the important people in the life snap it back together. For me, it's about solving the problem, right? To me, we make money to solve this problem. We don't solve this problem to make money. And so, like, for me, it would be an unsatisfied thing. My wife is like, I don't want to live with you for the next 50 years, like, every day thinking, wow, what if, right? And so that's really the filter for me.
So I'll talk about from an investor perspective, because you asked both. So we have a really, really simple way of thinking about exit dynamics. When companies are doing well and an entrepreneur wants to sell, we immediately are sellers. So it's very simple for us if the entrepreneur wants to sell in situations where the company's going well. We don't play the, oh, but we should just go for more kind of game, because we view it as a multi-time experience. I hope to be able to work with that entrepreneur on next business in a couple of years, and I don't want to be in a position where I was the guy that somehow prevented that from happening. So that's a pretty easy one for us. Second, when companies are not doing well, or when we've lost confidence in the companies in terms of their long-term arc, those are times that you often sell a business. Not doing well and lost confidence in long-term arc are quite different things, right? There are situations where the companies are really just not working, but then you have situations where the companies are working and they're doing interesting things, but the amount of capital that you need to get to the next level is too significant, or the market dynamics of what's shifting start to feel uncomfortable, or you've lost passion collectively, or the entrepreneur's lost passion for what you're doing. And these happen at different stages, so it's not just early and it's not just late, but it's being thoughtful. So in one situation, the first situation, we're just reactive. In the second situation, we tend to be proactive, but not in the proactive of, okay, it's time to sell your business. Thank you for the microphone. Okay, we're selling the business. It's a longer term thing, which could include starting to think about a year or two from now, or it could be, all right, we're out of money in 6 months and we've had some inbound. Let's exercise that inbound and see what happens. I would say for us, and I'm talking about Foundry Group, not investors in general, that's how we try to think about it. And the last is, we have lots of situations where entrepreneurs just want to keep going for it, and that's totally awesome, right? So if we're in it and it's working well and you want to keep going for it, let's keep going for it. And so it's really modulated based on a continual conversation that hopefully doesn't have any surprises. And the only time where it's really frustrating or uncomfortable, or where I see a lot of damage done, is when there are surprises, not when there's different opinions, right? Bart's having a really shitty month. Not this month, but he was having a really shitty month. He was really tired. And, he had inbound, and, I was very skeptical of the potential acquirer because I'd had inbound experience with them before, and I expected that he was going to get, if he got an offer, it would be a shitty offer, but mostly he'd just get jacked around. I gave him that information, but I let him spend time with it. I didn't say, don't spend time. It's not worth your time. And if we had gotten an interesting offer and it had been interesting to Bart, that would have been something to follow through. So how you approach that as an investor, I think, by the way, I think a lot of investors are very poor at dealing with that because they're trying to optimize mostly for themselves, not recognizing that as an investor, the best way you optimize for yourself, at least from my frame of reference, is to get behind the entrepreneur and really listen hard and pay attention to and understand the signals from that entrepreneur while you're trying to help him or her make real progress. Go ahead, you want to add something?
Well, I was just going to say, so we did have one inbound in 2011 or 2010, so before Brad invested. And I remember it was, it was very serious, right? So I was like in another city meeting with that company's CEO, and we sat down and had breakfast together, and that CEO gave me a number, and I spent, the next couple hours on the phone with my mom and with Kelly Smith from Curious Office and with Michelle Goldberg, and we sort of all, well, let me put it this way. Michelle and Kelly basically said, whatever you want to do, we're behind you. Like they were both going to make a lot of money on it. Well, a lot. They had put so little money to work that they were going to make a great multiple on it, but not like a ton of money on it. And we would have personally, my mom and I, right, would have made a lot of money on it. And there have been many, many, many times, most of them coming in the last 12 to 18 months, when I've reflected on that and felt a lot of regret and remorse. But, at the same time, that number, now our revenue is almost that number. So it's hard to know, right? Like 2 years from now, will I be going, God, I'm really glad I didn't do that. It's hard. It's hard.
So last comment on this, because it's interesting. Rand talks about having had one inbound. Since we invested, we haven't put any energy, emotional energy or functional energy into looking for an exit for the company. The business as it stands today, if we actively went to try to sell the company, or if we proactively went to sell the company, we would sell it. I believe that the company would sell for substantially more money than the price we invested at, which is substantially more money than that offer, right? So I have a lot of confidence just based on where the company is and the business is. I don't have discomfort about it, right?
I have some transparency I'm not going to share here, but we can. Yeah.
That's fine. But the end result of that is it doesn't really matter until you have a willing seller and a willing buyer. And so until you get to that point in time, it's all speculative anyway. And what I encourage entrepreneurs to do is don't spend a lot of time worrying about it until you're in one of those situations where you have inbound that's interesting to you, or you're in a place where you've lost confidence in the future vector of what you're doing. And it doesn't mean that your business is doing shitty, but you've just lost confidence in the future vector, and it's time to think about it. Those are the 2 moments in time where it's worth spending time on it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you, guys.
Anybody who's been around to any of the other events in the country know that this is probably the highest quality, most insightful, most honest panel you're going to see this year. And this is awesome. So again, let's give Brad, Bart, Rand, and Ben a big thanks. And again, none of this would be possible without our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, Colorado Technology Association, Comcast, and Chase. So thank you all. Have a great day.